The morning sun moved softly through the tall trees as Sam walked alone along a quiet forest trail, his boots pressing gently into the damp earth while birds called softly from hidden branches above him. Sam had lived this quiet life for many years, working as a park ranger protecting land that few people ever visited. He liked the silence because it gave him space to think and to breathe, but that morning the silence felt different, heavier, almost as if the forest was waiting for something to happen. His steps were slow and steady, and his mind wandered, as it often did, toward memories of a past life. He had once lived far away from these trees. Sam had not always been a ranger. Once long ago he had dreamed of being a hero in a big city helping people in trouble, but life had taken a quiet turn, and he now lived among trees and trails instead of streets and sirens. He did not regret it, yet sometimes when the wind moved just right through the forest, he felt a strange pull in his chest, as if the past was calling his name again. He shook the thought away, and kept walking along the narrow path that twisted between tall pines and thick bushes. After walking for some time, Sam noticed something unusual ahead of him. At first it looked like a large dark shadow tangled with vines and branches. The shape did not match any rock or fallen tree he had seen before. Curiosity stirred inside him, and he stepped off the main trail, pushing through low plants and hanging vines. As he moved closer, the shape slowly began to take form, and his heart started to beat faster. Hidden deep between two massive trees stood an old fire truck, rusted, broken, and covered in years of forest growth. Its faded red paint had turned brown and green from moss and rain, and vines wrapped around its body like the woods had claimed it as its own. Sam stood frozen for a moment, staring at the machine in disbelief. There was no road nearby, no sign that any large vehicle should ever have reached such a deep and untouched area. His mind struggled to understand how this heavy truck had arrived there. He slowly walked around it, brushing leaves from the side panels. The windows were thick with dirt and age, yet he could still see inside the empty seats and the silent steering wheel that had not moved in decades. On the side of the truck was an old symbol from a small town fire station, barely visible under the rust, and beside it was a faded marking showing it was made 70 years ago. A wave of strange emotion passed through Sam as he stood close to the truck. It was not fear exactly, nor excitement, but something deeper, like the feeling that comes before a long-forgotten memory returns. He placed his hand on the cold metal, and felt the rough surface beneath his palm. The forest was so quiet that he could hear his own breathing echo softly inside the truck's shell. Slowly, he pulled open the driver door, which cried with a weak sound as the rusted hinges gave way. Dust floated into the air, catching the sunlight and making the space glow softly for a moment. Inside, the seat was torn apart, and small plants had grown up through the floor, as if time itself had planted roots there. The dashboard was cracked and faded, and the smell of old oil mixed with wet earth filled the air. Sam leaned inside, and his eyes fell upon a small object resting on the dashboard. It was a photograph. He gently picked it up, careful not to damage it further, and slowly wiped away the dust with his thumb. The image that appeared showed three people standing proudly in front of the same fire truck when it was new. Their faces were young, full of hope and purpose. Two men and one woman stood side by side with arms crossed and smiles wide. Sam felt an unexpected tightness in his chest as he studied the photo. Something about their eyes made him feel as if they were reaching through time toward him. He slid the photograph into his pocket, knowing it was safer with him than left inside the truck. Then he climbed down and walked toward the back of the vehicle. That was when he noticed a large metal compartment sealed shut by a thick lock. Unlike the others, this lock looked stronger, untouched by weather or animals, almost as if it had been protected with care and intention. Sam reached out and touched the cool surface, and at once a strange feeling rushed through him, as if the air itself had shifted around him. His heart beat heavier now, and he could not explain why, but he felt certain that whatever was hidden inside that compartment was the true reason the truck had been left behind. He tried to open it, pulling firmly on the handle, but it would not move. The lock held tight, refusing to give even a small sound of weakness. Sam stepped back and stared at it, thinking through his options. He knew he would need tools and more light to open it properly, and it would take time, but the idea of walking away felt almost impossible. He looked around at the thick trees and quiet shadows, feeling as if unseen eyes were watching him from the forest itself, guarding the secret that waited behind that door. Reluctantly, Sam pulled out his paper map and marked the exact location with steady hands. He took one last long look at the truck, its broken form standing silent among the trees like a ghost from another world. As he turned back toward the trail, his mind raced with questions. How did the truck reach this place? Why was it hidden so deeply? And what was important enough to seal inside that heavy compartment for 70 long years? As Sam walked back toward the ranger station, the forest seemed to close in around him tighter than before, and every sound felt louder: the snapping of a twig, the call of a distant bird, the shifting of leaves in the wind. His thoughts would not slow, and the image of the locked compartment filled his mind again, and again. He did not yet understand why this discovery felt so personal, but somewhere deep inside him a feeling had awakened, one that had been asleep for many years. All the way back he felt as though the forest had shifted around him just slightly, as if the path he had always walked had quietly changed direction without him noticing, and though he did not yet know it, this forgotten fire truck had just opened the door to a story tied to his past in a way he could never have imagined, one that would test his courage, his heart, and the life he had built far from the world he once knew. Sam did not sleep much that night. The image of the rusted fire truck and the heavy locked compartment stayed in his mind like a burning picture. Every time he closed his eyes he saw that metal door waiting for him in the deep forest. The morning light finally rose and found him already dressed, packing tools into his bag with quiet focus. He took a small cutting tool, a flashlight, extra batteries, water, and his map with a marked location. He locked the ranger station and stepped back into the forest. With a steady heart and restless thoughts, the walk back felt longer than before, even though his feet followed the same path. The trees seemed closer, the shadows deeper, and the air thicker with quiet tension. Birds watched from above, and the wind whispered through leaves as if the forest itself remembered what lay hidden within its heart. When Sam reached the spot his breath caught again. The fire truck stood exactly as before, silent, wrapped in vines, resting between wide tree trunks like a forgotten guardian of time. Sam placed his bag on the ground and knelt beside the locked compartment. He took a moment to breathe slowly to calm his racing heart. Then he pulled out the cutting tool and positioned it against the thick metal lock. The first attempt made a harsh sound that echoed through the trees and made his body tense. He paused, listening, but the forest returned to silence, so he continued pushing harder. Sparks jumped briefly as metal fought against metal. The sound felt loud in the quiet woods, yet Sam did not stop until with one final force the lock cracked open and fell to the ground with a dull, heavy thud. For a moment Sam did not move. He stared at the opened compartment, as if the dark space inside might breathe back at him. He lifted his flashlight slowly, and shone the beam into the shadows. The light revealed a wooden box resting neatly inside, wrapped in thick cloth, and tied with rope, carefully placed, as if someone had wanted to protect it from time. Sam reached in, and lifted the box with both hands. The weight surprised him. It was heavier than it looked. He placed it gently on the ground beside the truck and untied the rope with trembling fingers. The cloth fell away and revealed an old wooden chest scarred with scratches and dark stains, not from age alone but from use and struggle. Sam opened it slowly. The hinge gave a faint cry of metal against wood. Inside lay a collection of items placed with great care: a folded fire jacket, worn and faded, a small metal badge with an old fire station symbol, and a bundle of letters tied with string. Sam felt his throat tighten as he touched the jacket, the fabric rough beneath his fingers, the smell of smoke still faintly trapped in its fibers, as if the past had never fully let go. He lifted the badge next. It was scratched and dull, but the symbol was clear, the same one he had seen on the side of the truck. His hands began to shake as he turned it over, and found a name carved into the back. The name was Ben, and in that instant something inside Sam shifted deeply. A memory rose from long ago, buried under years of quiet life. He remembered a voice, a warm laugh, strong arms lifting him high as a child. The face slowly formed in his mind, and his breath left him in a soft, broken motion. Sam sat back on the forest floor, holding the badge in his palm, his thoughts racing through distant years. He had been very young when the fire took his home, when chaos and smoke filled the night, and the sound of sirens cut through everything. He remembered being carried out wrapped in thick arms, shielded from the worst of it. He remembered waking later in a bright room with soft light and gentle voices, but he had never known the name of the one who saved him, only that a fire worker had pulled him from danger and then disappeared into the rush of that night. Now here in this hidden place deep in the forest lay the badge of that same fireworker, whose face now filled Sam's memory with clarity. The man named Ben had not only saved his life, but had somehow vanished from the world soon after, leaving behind only whispers and questions. Sam reached for the bundle of letters with careful hands, and slowly untied the string. The paper inside was yellowed and fragile, the words written by hand slanted with time. The first letter spoke of duty and fear, of nights full of flame and smoke, and of a small child pulled from a burning home, wrapped in fire jacket, and carried through falling ash. Sam felt his chest tighten as he read each line slowly. The words painted the very memory he had carried all his life without understanding. The writer spoke of the child with kindness and quiet hope, wishing that the boy would grow in peace away from fire and loss. The next letters told a deeper story of a dangerous blaze that had swept through a hillside near the town 70 years ago, a fire that moved faster than anyone expected, trapping a fire crew on a narrow road. The writer Ben spoke of a choice made in a heartbeat: to drive the truck into the forest away from town to draw the blaze off course. The plan had worked, but the cost had been high. The road vanished, the truck became trapped, and the crew never returned. To the station the letters spoke not with sorrow but with calm resolve, as if the writer had accepted the path long before it had fully formed. Sam closed the final letter with hands that now trembled freely. Tears rose in his eyes and slid down his face without sound. The hidden truth of the fire truck had unfolded into a story of courage and sacrifice that had shaped his own life without his knowing. The forest around him remained silent, as if honoring the memory that had just found its voice again. Sam remained there for a long time, sitting beside the long-forgotten fire truck, holding the letters and the badge, feeling as if two distant paths of time had quietly crossed in this hidden place. He knew his life had changed forever, not through noise or sudden shock, but through a deep, quiet truth that now filled his heart with purpose. He had lived many years wondering why he had survived that night as a child, and now at last he knew. As he stood and placed the items back into the wooden box, Sam felt a new weight in his chest, not of burden, but of responsibility. The story of Ben and the lost fire crew could not remain buried any longer. The forest had kept the secret for decades, but now it was time for the world to remember what had been given in silence. Sam lifted the box carefully and prepared to carry it back toward the ranger station, knowing that the next steps he would take would reach far beyond the quiet trails he had always walked. As Sam took one final look at the forgotten fire truck hidden among the trees, he felt no fear now, only respect and quiet strength. The forest seemed to breathe gently again, as if releasing a long-held memory back into the world, and as he turned away with the wooden box in his arms, he carried more than old objects. He carried a truth that would reshape his future and honor a past that had waited 70 years to be seen. Sam walked out of the forest carrying the wooden box close to his chest, as if it were something fragile and living. The weight was not heavy on his arms, but it pressed deeply on his heart. Every step back toward the ranger station felt different now. The trees no longer felt like silent watchers, but like guardians that had trusted him with a long-hidden truth. The wind moved gently through the branches as if guiding him forward, and even the birds sounded softer, as though they too respected what had been uncovered. When Sam reached the ranger station, the sun was already high in the sky. He placed the wooden box carefully on the long table inside the small building, and just stood there for a moment, breathing slowly. His hands still trembled slightly as memories from the letters moved through his thoughts. He knew this story could not stay only with him. The fireworker named Ben had given everything in silence, and the town needed to know what had truly happened long ago. Sam closed the station for the day and drove toward the nearest town. The road felt strangely short, as if time itself had moved him forward faster than usual. When he entered the familiar streets, he saw people walking past shops and sitting outside cafes, living ordinary lives, unaware that a forgotten story of courage was about to rise from the earth beneath their feet. Sam parked near the old town hall, holding the wooden box tightly, and stepped inside. The town hall was quiet at first. Only one worker sat behind a desk sorting through papers. Sam asked gently if anyone there knew about the fire from 70 years ago. The worker looked up with mild surprise and said only old stories remained, vague tales passed down with little detail. Sam opened the wooden box slowly on the counter and laid out the fire jacket, the badge, and the bundle of letters. The room seemed to grow still, as if the air itself had paused to listen. The worker lifted the badge with careful fingers and turned it over. Her eyes widened when she read the name carved into the back. She whispered that the name Ben was known in the town not as a hero, but as a mystery. No one had ever returned after that final fire. No bodies were found, and the fire truck was never recovered. It was as if the entire crew had vanished into the night, leaving only broken questions behind them. News traveled fast through the town. Within hours, elders arrived, some walking slowly with the weight of years in their steps, others supported by family members. As Sam read the letters aloud, the room filled with quiet emotion. Tearful eyes closed, hands pressed together in silent respect. Many had waited their whole lives to understand what had truly become of those brave workers, and now the truth stood before them, clear and undeniable. One elderly woman stepped forward with shaking hands and touched the fire jacket softly. She whispered that her brother had been on that crew, and that her family had lived in quiet sorrow for decades, not knowing where to place their grief. Sam listened to her words with deep respect, realizing that the story he had uncovered belonged to many hearts, not just his own. As the day faded into evening, plans quietly formed within the town. An official remembrance would be held, and the hidden fire truck would be recovered with care and honor. Sam shared the exact location and offered to guide the team. When the time came, the town leaders thanked him with voices full of emotion, yet Sam felt no pride, only humility. He knew he had simply been the one chosen by circumstance and quiet persistence to uncover what had waited so long to be seen. That night Sam returned to the ranger station after many hours of listening and sharing. He sat alone beneath soft yellow light, and thought about the fireworker named Ben. The letters had not spoken of fear, only duty, and hope. Sam realized then that his own life had been shaped by that same unseen courage, that if not for that single choice made long ago, he would never have grown beyond that dark night of his childhood. The quiet life he had built among the trees now felt like a gift handed forward through decades of silence. The following morning a small group gathered at the town edge, including elders, workers, and a recovery team. Sam led them along the forest trail. The path felt less lonely now, with many footsteps walking beside him. The forest opened again, revealing the forgotten fire truck, just as it had stood before, yet now it no longer felt like a ghost, but like a resting place waiting to be honored. People stood in quiet stillness as the vines were gently removed and the recovery team worked with care and respect. No rush, no careless movement, only gratitude in every motion. As the truck was prepared to be lifted from the forest floor, many eyes filled with tears, not only for loss but for understanding. Sam stepped back, watching as the hidden story finally returned to the world. The wooden box had already been returned to the town, where it would be preserved and displayed with care. The fire jacket and badge no longer hidden in shadows, but placed where all could see and remember. After the recovery, Sam walked alone once more through the quiet forest. The same trails he had walked every day now felt changed forever. The trees stood the same, yet his heart was different. The meaning of his life as a ranger had deepened beyond protecting land. He had become a bridge between past and present, between silent sacrifice and living memory. That evening, as Sam sat outside the ranger station looking toward the distant hills, he felt calm in a way he never had before. The questions that once lived in his heart about his survival had finally found their answer. Now his life no longer felt like a quiet escape from the world, but a continuation of something greater, a promise carried forward through time from one unseen hand to another. And though the world beyond the forest had begun to speak the name Ben with honor and respect, Sam knew that the greatest change had happened within himself. The fear of the past no longer followed him, and in its place stood a quiet strength rooted in truth and courage. He no longer felt like a man who had merely survived a fire long ago, but like someone who had been chosen to carry its final light forward into the future. The town woke to a new kind of morning, one that felt softer and heavier at the same time, as if the air itself carried memory with every moving breath. Sam stood near the edge of the small square, where people slowly gathered. Some came alone, others with family, some held flowers, others carried nothing but quiet respect in their eyes. The recovered fire truck now rested at the center, covered gently with cloth. The same truck that had been hidden in silence for 70 long years now stood in the open light for all to see. Sam watched from a few steps back as the elders spoke quietly among themselves, and younger faces listened with careful attention. The wooden box with the fire jacket and badge was placed beside the truck, and when the cloth was slowly lifted, many people took in a sharp breath. The truck no longer looked like a forgotten object of rust, but like a witness that had finally found its voice. The scars and marks on its body now felt like signs of strength, not age. As the gathering grew larger, the town leader stepped forward and began to speak about the fire that had once threatened the hills decades ago, about the crew that had driven into danger so the town could live in peace, and about the truth that had finally returned through quiet discovery. He spoke the name Ben with clear, strong voice, and many heads bowed in respect. Some people closed their eyes as if speaking a prayer without words. Sam stood with hands resting at his sides, feeling the weight of every gaze. When the town leader spoke his name next, he did not feel pride or fear, only a deep calm, as if the moment had arrived exactly as it should. The leader thanked Sam for carrying the truth forward, and for listening when the forest chose to reveal what it had kept hidden. Sam nodded quietly, knowing the words were not just for him, but for the path that had led him there. After the gathering, many people came to speak with Sam. Some shared stories passed through family lines, others simply placed a hand on his shoulder in quiet thanks. One man spoke of how his grandfather had once waited for the fire crew to return and never stopped placing fresh flowers at the station gate for years. One woman spoke of growing up hearing the story of a truck that vanished into flame and shadow with no ending until now. As the sun moved slowly west, the town prepared a place of rest for the fire jacket and badge within the hall, where the light would always reach them. Sam watched as the items were placed with care, and knew they were no longer objects of loss, but symbols of courage that would guide future hearts long after his own steps faded from the trail. That evening Sam returned to the forest alone, not out of duty, but out of need. The paths welcomed him once more with familiar quiet, and he walked until he reached the place where the fire truck had stood. Only the marks in the earth remained where it had rested so long. The forest was still and gentle, and Sam lowered himself to the ground, placing one hand on the soil where the wheels had once pressed down. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he spoke softly into the open air, not to the trees, not to the sky, but to the unseen hands of the past. He thanked Ben for the choice made in that burning night, for carrying a child away from danger, and for believing without knowing that the child would one day walk this same earth in peace. The wind moved through the branches as if in reply, and Sam felt a warmth in his chest that needed no words. From that day forward Sam's life changed, not in loud ways but in quiet powerful ones. His steps became firmer, his voice steadier. When he spoke to others, the work he once did to protect the forest now felt tied to a deeper purpose of honor and connection. He began guiding small groups through the trails, telling the true story of the fire truck and the crew that saved a town with one brave choice. Children listened with wide eyes and elders with folded hands. Every telling carried the same strength. Without fear. Seasons passed and the town slowly reshaped itself around the truth that had returned. New paths were cleared. A small remembrance place was built near the forest edge where the trail began. People came from distant places to learn the story, not of great noise or battle, but of quiet courage and choice. Sam stood often at the trailhead, greeting visitors not as a hero but as a keeper of memory. One evening as the sun dipped low and painted the hills in soft gold, Sam stood beside the remembrance place watching a family walk the trail. A father held the hand of a small child, and the child looked up at the trees with wide wonder. Sam's heart moved gently as he saw the moment for what it was, not just a walk in the forest, but the continuation of a life once saved in flame, now moving freely beneath open sky. Later that night Sam sat outside the ranger station, feeling the cool air settle around him. The stars shined above like quiet witnesses to all that had passed, and all that would come. He no longer felt the questions of his past pulling at him. His life no longer felt like a path taken by chance, but like one shaped by unseen hands and steady choices that crossed time without breaking. In the quiet he understood that the fire had not only taken things long ago but had also given him something without his knowing, a life guided by meaning, and a heart capable of carrying memory without weight. The forest that once felt like shelter now felt like a partner walking beside him in silence and strength. And so the story of the fire truck did not end with its discovery, or its return to light. It lived on in footsteps and voices, in children who learned the meaning of quiet courage, in elders who finally found peace in knowing how their loved ones had chosen to stand. It lived on in Sam, who no longer walked alone in the forest, but with the steady presence of a past that had finally found rest. And in the deep quiet between stars and trees, the choice made 70 years ago continued to move forward, not as flame, but as light, carried gently from one life to the next, without fear, without rush, only with strength and calm that could never again be hidden.